Welcome back from the short commercial break. We're still discussing the genetically modified organisms. But of course, don't forget Zabu for you to enjoy the trading experience. Of course, if you are, you will be in position to purchase stocks. That's on Altex Securities. So yes, there's *292#, and there will be a list of variabilities of bonds. You will be in position to choose whatever you want. It could be a 1-year bond, a 5-year bond. You will be in position to do that. Zabu has made it much more easy. You can buy stocks at whatever part of the country you are. You don't have to come to Kampala to get stocks, but you will be in position at whatever, regardless whether you have a smartphone or you don't have a smartphone, you will be in position to purchase stocks. And of course, you earn a side income. *292# and the magic starts. Do something new. The markets open at 8:15 a.m. and close at exactly 3:15 p.m. That's in the afternoon. All right, I'm still with Dr. Emmanuel Otala, and we are discussing genetically modified organisms, and he's also a member of Parliament, West Budama, but in the south. All right, Doctor,
yes,
still having a conversation. Before we went into the break,
yes,
we are discussing the aspect that of these countries which largely have the fertile soils we have, they don't even have the climate.
yes,
The climatic conditions in those countries don't match our conditions, but they outgrow us in terms of productivity.
yes,
You know, like I gave an example of Italy, the leading, one of the best coffee growers in the world, outcompeting us, Uganda, who have the fertile soils that
Yes.
favor. So, a viewer out there is asking themselves, despite that we are looking at the disadvantage, couldn't those countries be outbeating us in Africa due to genetically modified organisms?
Well, I don't think so that Italy, for example, has introduced genetically modified coffee. I don't think so. There are other countries, like, for example, outside Europe, like India, they introduced genetically modified cotton, and they had quite a boost in the productivity.
Okay.
Of course, the obvious thing is that genetically modified plants are more productive, but I think what is happening in Italy is that they are using their indigenous seeds, but taking better care of the plants.
Okay.
First of all, they use fertilizers, but also they apply a lot of irrigation, which for us, we are depending on natural rainfall.
Natural rainfall.
Yes. So, and of course, our plants suffer, they wither. When the rains finally come, the yield is not as comparable to a country like Italy, for example. And so, if we want to increase our productivity as well, and we still maintain our indigenous seeds, then we need to add something. We can add fertilizers, we can irrigate, and I think that is what the Parish Development Model is all about now, to increase productivity of our crops without necessarily introducing genetically modified organisms or genetically modified plants. Of course, the fact, as I said, is that genetically modified plants are more productive. So the dichotomy is increased productivity,
Yes.
versus quality. So that is the challenge that you find that we are facing.
Okay.
Yes, genetically modified organisms or crops are more productive, but what is the quality? Look at even the chicken that now so many people are consuming. Nobody knows the nature of those chicken.
Sure.
But you find they are virtually tasteless. They grow very fast. They don't have adequate nutrients in them, but you are satisfied because you fill your stomach. And of course, the proponents of genetically modified plants actually argue, basing on food security, that the population of the world is growing pretty fast, and so for that matter, we also need
more food production.
More food production. But those who are against argue that, wait a minute, But when you introduce genetically modified organisms, first of all, you alter the original genes of those plants, but also you develop different varieties that even kill others. Okay, they are resistant. You have to use a lot of chemicals, like pesticides, to maintain them, to make them grow. Those are all expenses. You have to use a lot of fertilizers. So what is the fate of the African people who hitherto are not applying this? And worse still is the fact that there can be cross-pollination, that the genetically modified organisms can actually infect the indigenous groups.
Sure. Wait, within, like, if they are planted near each other?
Oh yes, that is it. That's why we've been battling with this issue of one of the issues of the president raised as a concern is, but these crops are going to infect our indigenous seeds, indigenous crops.
A little bit on that.
Yes.
What should be the distance? Because I'm imagining the distance, which kilometers should they be far apart from each other?
You see, yes.
Avoid the infection.
Andrew, you see, you might be remembering our P5, P3 science on pollination.
Yes.
The agents of pollination are insects, wind, birds, and so many things.
Human beings.
Human beings. So look at a situation where an insect flies, takes some nectar from a GMO plant, and flies a whole long distance to go and cross-pollinate another plant.
Okay.
So even the president was proposing, can we grow these crops in greenhouses?
Okay.
And still, that does not also save the situation, because the greenhouses are not
100% proved.
Yes, are not proved, so that the wind cannot blow pollen from the greenhouse to outside. So you find that is so challenging.
Okay.
Yeah, that is one aspect really, where you find that if we are to introduce genetically modified plants, then it means eventually, in the short run, everything will be genetically modified. Because the terminator genes that I talked about earlier on will go and get embedded in the indigenous plants. So which means next season you planted your indigenous maize, but you will not be able to replant, to get the seeds from it and replant. Because they have already got the terminator gene embedded in their genes.
Okay.
And so the only alternative you have is you have to look for an outlet where Monsanto agents are, and you buy the seeds from them. And then the crop will not do well because you've got to spray with relevant pesticides. That is an additional...
Are they specific pesticides?
Of course, they are very specific, studied for each particular seed or for each plant, that this will be the best pesticide for it. So which means you are incurring expenses.
Wow.
And then for them to grow, you've got to put fertilizer. We are still proud of using our soils without fertilizer, although that is what is making our productivity low. But at least you remember not so long ago, the government of Uganda had introduced a fertilizer factory in Tororo, and Dongzong, but it collapsed. That is also one way of boosting our own productivity, the productivity of our indigenous plants.
But maybe you talked about the fertilizers, artificial fertilizers.
Yes.
And they also, in a way, like GMOs, for a long, in the long run, affecting the soil.
Oh yes, definitely they affect the soil. And when you look at fertilizers, when you look at pesticides, you find that in an area where genetically modified plants have been grown for quite some time, you find even the water table is contaminated with those chemicals.
Okay. Yes.
So that is the overall effect on the ecology. Yeah, but of course, we can still use fertilizer, all right, to boost our productivity, because we need also to have adequate supply in order to ensure food security for our own people. But of course, that is not the same as using pesticides also at the same time. You can boost productivity alone by providing fertilizers, but also you can also think about organic fertilizers. You see, you may be wondering, or you may be already aware of the fact that we are still proud as Africans to be producing organic foods.
Definitely.
And yes, we are producing organic foods and exporting organic foods.
Yes.
And you may be wondering why in the developed countries they are not very keen. Those who have the money are not very keen to eat the genetically modified foods.
Those who have the money.
Yes, those who have the money will prefer to buy organic. And organic sells more expensively. That demonstrates you the quality aspects. But it also demonstrates to you the aspect that there could be health risks in genetically modified organisms. In fact, there are so many studies that say if you eat a genetically modified organism of a plant, some of the residues, if residues remain within your GIT, it is absorbed in the body, and it is the one leading to some of these so many diseases that we are now witnessing. By the way, between 1996 and 7 years down the road, the incidence, or rather the prevalence of non-communicable diseases went up 13%, by 13%.
Okay, that's a little bit.
When we talk about non-communicable diseases, we are talking about diseases like high blood pressure, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, cancers. All those have now shot up. And whereas we cannot, up to this day, clearly say there is a causation that it is genetically modified organism causing these diseases, but there is an association that is already being witnessed and being studied further.
Okay, Doctor, talking about that here, I'm trying to imagine, just like we can have organic fertilizers.
Yes.
And you mentioned when you're addressing to the public that there is that gene called the terminator gene.
Yes.
Yeah. And is there a way? Okay, I'm trying to, because the challenge we have in Uganda is boosting productivity.
Yes.
And we are trying to put technology at use, at the same time minding health.
Yes.
So just like we can have organic fertilizers, as research, as a scientist, can't we develop seeds? They are GMOs, but they don't have that
terminator
gene that you mentioned. Because I'm looking at a farmer in the village.
Yes.
Probably he's watching me right now.
Yes.
And they're like, okay, this, but we want to increase output. I mean, we're in a crisis. Isn't there where we can play around with research and exclude the terminator gene?
It's possible. It's possible, but it will not be economically viable for the person who has made the patent, who has made the innovation rather. Yes, the reason is if they made something which is more productive, then they have lost out in the aspect of farmers buying seeds year in, year out, season in, season out. I think that earns them more. Okay, but definitely the scientists can do anything. Can do anything.
Because I was trying to look at
it is not of their interest.
It's not of their interest.
Yes, because of economic
gains.
Money.
Okay. Of course, that's something also there. But despite that, that they have the monopoly over that manufacturing, can't we in Uganda have, with research, according to where we've reached, develop our own seeds, which can actually be planted, grow, and even plant those very seeds to keep on growing, just for the nation.
You see, Andrew, what you are talking about is is what you've seen in most of our research stations going on, trying to modify our own plants without tackling the genes, without altering the genes. So there is the aspect of hybrid.
Okay.
Hybrid seeds will boost productivity. Hybrid plants will boost productivity as opposed to genetically modified.
Yes.
And that is what you see our scientists are doing in Kawanda, in Where, and that must be promoted really. Yes.
How far has government gone with pushing these projects?
They have done quite a lot. Most of the crops we are now growing across the country are actually modified hybrid seeds, modified hybrid plants. There are so many developments. You've seen different varieties of cassava. They develop from Serere, Where, and other sites. We are already using those hybrid. You remember in the 70s, there was the hybrid maize. You could get one cob as long as I don't know how many.
But some people, when they see those, they get scared when they see those big, crops coming out big. They say it's not, something's not right.
Yes, but it is hybrid. So with the hybrid, you also achieve high productivity.
Okay.
But the genes are not altered. And I think the hybrid is the way to go.
Hybrid is the way to go.
Yes.
So
the way to go.
So farmers already embracing them. So are there programs to distribute? Because there are some farmers who may not be in position to come to Kawanda to observe these, but probably they need to be reached out to where they are. I'm thinking of somebody deep in the village somewhere.
Yes.
Reach out programs to give out these seeds, and because majority are being given GMOs.
Yes.
And I imagine they are being given our own seeds.
Yes.
The hybrid.
Yeah, I think government already has that through the agriculture extension workers, but also we have various farmers, model farmers across the country, from whom others can learn, because like in my place, Tororo, we grow quite a lot of cassava, and you find one farmer brings cassava cuttings, a better variety this season, and the next season other farmers come and get the cuttings from him or her, and in that way it spreads all over. So, but it needs to be promoted really.
Really?
Yeah.
Because now, if you are to look at this perspective, then where do we see Uganda's agriculture output? Because we are eliminating the GMOs and we are putting the hybrid in place. Let's project 10 years from now.
Yes. You see, we under the parish development model, one of the aspects, actually, pillar number one is to increase productivity of our crops.
Yes.
Right now, what we are producing is grossly inadequate compared to our population. So we need to innovate, and there are different aspects. One that we need to pursue in order to increase our productivity. One is starting on irrigation. Because we have, as I said earlier, we have relied so much on rain-fed agriculture. And with the current trend of climate change, your guess is as good as mine.
Definitely.
Most of the time, the drought comes and scorches our plants.
Yes.
You've seen Karamoja, we've just recently provided them with the foods, rains came, they tried to plant, but everything was scorched. And so they have again lost. We are now thinking again of how do we save them from dying. So we must bear in mind the fact that there is climate change, and so we must introduce varieties, plant varieties that are climate change resilient. We must definitely introduce the aspect of fertilizers, and that is why
organic fertilizers.
Yes, organic fertilizers, so that our plants can grow faster. But that also would ensure that we still maintain our market of organic crops. Organic crops, so we earn income. But in the long run, we cannot do without introducing inorganic fertilizers. Yeah, as well.
Maybe just a brief before we get into a break. Let's talk about, are there initiatives done and how far in regarding to exporting our seeds, which are where the genes are not altered, and how is the response to the people out there? Don't they find it so amazing?
Andrew, you are asking me a very funny question. I say it's a funny question because the Europeans, the Americans, they already have each and every seed that we have in this country. They have them in their storage banks.
So they use the ones which have unaltered genes?
Because unaltered, they have our indigenous seeds. Everything is saved in their seed banks.
Sure.
So you see, that causes a worry that these people have kept our seeds. We don't have that capacity to keep our seeds. And that should be a big challenge to government, that how do we
keep our seeds?
Yes. How do we preserve our seeds so that in the event that
there's scarcity?
No, not the scarcity. In the event that genetically modified plants take over the whole world, and perhaps maybe end up with the negative impact in the communities, what will be our recourse? Can we change and get back to our seeds?
To the
Can we eliminate all the GMO and then we get back to our seeds? All the plant varieties, all the plants in this world are in greenhouses in the developed world.
That's great.
And so that should worry everybody, that why would they actually be keeping our plants, our seeds, and for us we don't have any mechanism, we don't have the capacity to do the same. In case of any eventualities, we don't have.
Okay.
Yes.
You talked about, so when do we think we can start actually storing our own indigenous seeds? Because talking about urging government, there should be a step taken to a deliberate effort to ensure that we have our indigenous seeds saved somewhere.
Yes.
And big number, not just few seeds.
Yes. That is really a matter for Parliament to really prevail over the executive, that this is something for them to pursue. The executive must earmark money and establish a bank, just like you saw not so long ago. They built an archive near the Ministry of Health. There is a whole archive there where all our documents are now being stored, because information is power. You disregard your information, you don't preserve your information today, then tomorrow you are going to regret. And that's why the way the government has built an archive for information is the way they should do for the seats as well. So this is something extremely important.
Yes. All right, let's get into, we shall start from there actually, regarding storage of seeds.
Yes.
How far probably, maybe, has there even been a thought of proposing that about storage?
Yeah, it has been there, definitely.
Good. We shall start from there. All right, I was still discussing genetically modified organisms with Dr. Emmanuel Otala. He's a member of Parliament too. And now let's get into a short commercial break. We'll return as we wind up the session.